Good morning, and thank you for joining us today as we discuss early college as a disruptive force for equity in the post-pandemic era and share results from MassINC's newest study. My name is Simone Gangi Lukula, and I'm the Early College Fellow here at MassINC, the Commonwealth's only nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy think and action tank. In my role at MassINC, I examine structural barriers in education and research how the Commonwealth can address the urgent needs of students and families whose identities have been marginalized. Going forward, I will be leading MassINC's early college work and look forward to collaborating with partners on advancing these efforts. It is a pleasure to be joined by all of you this morning as we discuss the findings of our research, which presents very promising data that indicates early college is working to significantly increase post-secondary completion and is a model we must continue to grow in our state. As Ben Foreman will note in his presentation, students from low-income families are directly benefiting from our investment in early college. To make this investment possible, we had to forge partnerships across different sectors, bringing together policymakers, school administrators, and business partners alike. Today, we witness the fruits of these partnerships, but we must commit to sustaining this bold statement for systemic change. In order to do this, we must build systems that hold ourselves and our communities accountable. Over the course of the next hour, you will hear from researchers and practitioners who will highlight the academic gains that early college programming is making. Most importantly, you will hear from students with real-world experience who will share how early college is quite literally shaping the trajectory of their lives. We have a lot to cover and many powerful perspectives to hear from. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague, COO of MassINC, Juana Matias.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Juana Matias, and I am the COO of MassINC. Simone, thank you for your kind introduction. We are thrilled to have you as part of the MassINC family, and I look forward to the impact I know you will drive in your role. At MassINC, we know that achieving equity in higher education can only come from intentional efforts and investments by both the public and private sectors. I know we all agree that we must find a better way forward, and early college data is showing that we're doing just that. Our most recent early college student cohorts in Massachusetts are 38% more likely than their peers to enroll in college immediately after high school, and 53% more likely to remain enrolled 1 year later. However, early college programs in our Commonwealth currently reach less than 2% of underserved students. There is without a doubt many more students that could greatly benefit from this tool. Today's conversation is centered around what we must continue to do to increase both private and public investments that further generate sustainable, high quality, early college programs across our Commonwealth. We know that the private sector is an engine of growth, and the evidence is clear. When it partners with the public sector, together, they make the unthinkable possible. Today is a perfect example of how the private sector, State Street in particular, is leading the way in closing the higher ed gap that disproportionately impacts Black and Brown students in our state. Their efforts are also ensuring that our Massachusetts knowledge economy will continue to meet our future workforce needs. And by the way, today, if you haven't seen so already, the Boston Business Journal brought attention to how the business sector is lining up behind early college, highlighting the investments of State Street. As such, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to State Street Foundation for their invaluable support of today's event and continued commitment to seeding innovation in Boston and across our gateway cities. State Street has made diversity, equity, and inclusion a priority, ensuring that opportunity for others is central to all that they do. On behalf of State Street, we are honored and privileged to have with us Yvonne Garcia, Chief of Staff to CEO of State Street Corporation and Global Head of Internal Communications. You can see that in all that she has accomplished, she illustrates the values instilled by her parents, a fidelity to giving back, a tireless work ethic, and a dogged determination. It's an absolute honor for me to introduce a woman who has paved the way for women like myself to expand our leadership roles across sectors and within our communities. We at MassINC are thrilled to have you here today, Yvonne, and look forward to continuing to work together to advance equity in higher education and to build a more diverse and capable workforce in our Commonwealth. Yvonne, bienvenida, and thank you for being here.
Gracias, Juana. Thank you. And the honor is mine to be introduced by you and the leadership that you represent and that of your team, and all the great efforts is just so admirable. So thank you for including me in this very important program today. So good morning. It's truly an honor to be here with all of you today to celebrate the achievements of early college students across the Commonwealth. As Juana mentioned, I'm Yvonne Garcia, the Chief of Staff to the Chairman and CEO of State Street, Global Head of Communications, as well as Client Engagement Strategy. But more importantly than the titles I hold, I'm the daughter of Dominican immigrants who came to this country in 1960, searching for that American dream that many have longed for in their journey here. A stable foundation to raise your family and the promise of a solid education. You see, in their minds, an education represents a passport to freedom. And although they weren't able to benefit from receiving one here, they knew the power and value in ensuring that their children did. I was actually raised in a neighborhood where I was the only student of color. And although I was born in this country, my first language was Spanish because my parents wanted to ensure that I had an appreciation of my culture and the language. They wanted to make sure that we were bilingual. And entering an all-white school and being the only kid that did not speak English and certainly didn't look like any of the kids there immediately presented a divide. But my parents worked, really hard, several jobs to ensure that they gave us the opportunity of the best education possible, because they knew that it would be an equalizer throughout our academic and, eventually professional journey. Now fast forward a few decades, I now have the benefit of being part of an organization really with the same beliefs and values that were instilled in me at a very young age. State Street understands the crucial role it plays in combating inequality and preparing students for all of the opportunities in our very knowledge-driven economy. We're truly proud to partner with MassINC on its objective analysis of early college as a strategy to increase equity in higher education. And not only is diversity, equity, and inclusion important to me as a leader, but it's also important to all of the various stakeholders that comprise State Street. So you think of all the different stakeholders we answer to: our board, our shareholders, our employees, our clients, and more importantly, our communities. So in short, it's really important for our long-term sustainability and that of our leading companies, of other leading companies here across the Commonwealth. We all know that studies have shown that diversity can lead to better business outcomes and better performance. We read it in the paper every day when companies are trying to kind of prove their points of the importance of bringing diverse talent, et cetera. But companies can only be as successful as the broader society and economy in which they operate in. At State Street, we believe that one of the most effective ways to improve the well-being of our communities is to ensure that all of the youth have educational pathways to success. For over 10 years, our foundation has been focused on investing in nonprofits that support diverse students succeeding in college and in their careers, which has truly been key to just promoting economic mobility for less advantaged students. Unfortunately, we all know this well, post-secondary and career success is not the reality for far too many low-income students and students of color. And that's why we're focused on early college as part of State Street's strategy to promote racial equity. The early college data, continues to demonstrate the effectiveness of the strategy in Massachusetts around closing equity gaps that exist regarding college attendance and completion. And as Juana mentioned, recently, State Street Foundation made its first round of grants totaling over $1.3 million to 4 high schools across the state. And we're truly looking forward to expanding our impact in that space in Boston and in Quincy in particular. Racial, economic, and social inequities challenge the resilience of our communities and weaken the foundation of our society. As businesses and communities and societies kind of build back after the pandemic, I believe we'll move forward with a new appreciation for the strength and resilience that we can derive through equity and inclusion. However, just as in in my industry, in the financial industry, like many others, it has, just as we've been forced to launch disruptive technology and employ innovative thinking, streamline our operating models in the light of the pandemic, just to be able to stay relevant and competitive in today's changing environment, so must the educational industry. So I challenge all of us to lead with a sense of urgency and to rethink what will be required to meet the educational needs of tomorrow. At this critical moment for our commonwealth, I really want to thank all of the participants in today's program for taking the time to discuss how we can partner across sectors and organizations to provide our students with the support and opportunity to escape the cycle of poverty and to ultimately succeed in adulthood and beyond. However, you hear it often, progress does not equal completion. We have so much more work to do to ensure that equality and justice are more than just concepts. And as I always say, if not us, then who? So thank you so much for including me in this very important program today. And I'd like to now hand it back to Simone.
Thank you, Yvonne. On behalf of MassINC, I'd like to thank the State Street Foundation again for supporting this important work. I also want to acknowledge our co-hosts, BECMA, Amplify Latinx, MBAE, Alpha, and Latinos for Education. Finally, I want to encourage everyone in attendance today to please use our question and answer function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. Later in the agenda, panelists will be able to respond live to them. I am pleased to welcome our keynote, Dr. Bridget Terry Long, Dean of the Harvard University Graduate School of Education and the Saris Professor of Economics. As a researcher of the National Bureau of Economics and a member of the National Academy of Education, Dr. Long has committed her life's work to make higher education more equitable and accessible for our most vulnerable populations. As a woman of color, I'm honored to introduce someone who has influenced my academic and professional work. Dr. Long, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much. To the team at MassINC, thank you for including me and for organizing this event. And Simone, thank you so much for your generous introduction. You are going to go so far, and I hope that I can continue to be a support for you. As Simone mentioned, I am the Dean of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, but for over 2 decades, my research has focused on college access and success. And my work has always been motivated by the incredible students who are around us. They have immense potential and talent, and it is our jobs to invest in them. We have to make sure their hard work pays off. And unfortunately, that is not always the case right now. What we do now will not only impact this generation, but future generations for years to come. So today I'm going to provide a little bit of the larger context for the event, drawing upon research related to my scholarly expertise and work. To start, let's just acknowledge the importance of college. As we all know, having access to post-secondary education is important for so many reasons. And it's not just the income difference, though the median earnings for those with a bachelor's degree was $25,000 higher in 2018 than those with only a high school degree. We see differences in unemployment rates, differences in those who have access to healthcare and other kinds of benefits, all going back to who has had access and who has been able to complete years of higher education. But having a college degree is also associated with a healthier lifestyle, more active civic participation and volunteerism, and better outcomes for their children. The benefits are numerous. But unfortunately, we're in a situation where there are tremendous gaps in college access by income and by race and ethnicity. And this results in limiting the opportunities for our most vulnerable students. Among high school graduates, 87% of students who are in the highest income quartile, the top 25%, continued into higher education, while it was only 61% for those coming from the bottom 25%. And this 26 percentage point difference, this gap, has been persisting for decades. It's only narrowed slightly since 1990, even through all of our efforts. And there are also gaps by race, with only 56% of Black students going to college in comparison to 71% of white students. Now, while these are national trends that I just shared with you, this is exactly what we're seeing in the Commonwealth, as reflected in work that I did years ago in partnership with MassINC to look at the gaps in access and success here for our students. And the concerns about college access have only grown in the past year. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen declining enrollment in higher education. Undergraduate enrollment was down about 5% last year, with the largest reductions being felt among freshman students. Freshman enrollment was down 13% nationally, and at community colleges, it was down 19%. What's most worrying, what we're seeing at community colleges, since they serve so many of our low-income first generation and students of color. And unfortunately, this spring, we have not seen much of a rebound, with undergraduate enrollment still being down about 5% overall. So we are now in a situation where the urgency is even greater as our students, as their families try to navigate a complicated system where they have been cut off from so many of their resources and have been forced to really focus on basic needs. But we can, and we absolutely should, close gaps in college access and completion. This is an imperative, not only for economic reasons, but also moral and social reasons. These gaps impact not only individuals, but generations of families and society as a whole, as we waste the incredible potential of our students to benefit from higher education and contribute in meaningful ways. But addressing these gaps is not an insurmountable task, as has been shown by research on early college programs. As one colleague described it, early college is a pathway. It's an access strategy that sets up students for future success. Early college initiatives are designed for young people who are at risk of not attaining a post-secondary credential. But by offering them opportunities to earn up to 2 years of college credit in high school at no or low cost, early college programs help support students plan and make progress through higher education. The early college high school movement has been around actually for about 20 years, and it's spread across the United States due to the success of the model. And now is the time for us to continue the expansion here in the Commonwealth. The research definitely underscores how successful these programs can be in helping and supporting our students. For example, American Institutes for Research, or AIR, has produced a summary of some of the efficacy studies on early college. In high school, early college students performed better on state high school assessments than their peers in traditional high schools in their local districts. Students who completed early college were significantly more likely to enroll in college and earn a college degree than students with similar characteristics. And in interviews, alumni of early colleges reported that the programs effectively prepared them to manage their time and be successful in rigorous classes in college. The model has been especially powerful for young people of color, as shown by recent research done by Jobs for the Future, or JFF. The early college model shows students that they can do college work, and this is a big motivator to do more. It works because it hits upon the major academic and non-academic obstacles that underrepresented students face. As a solution, early college is scalable and it produces cost-effective results. A 2019 study found that over 4 years, early colleges cost about $3,800 more per student than traditional high schools. However, the estimated return on that investment was nearly $34,000 and increased earnings for each student. And that doesn't even count all of the public benefits, social benefits that we receive from having more highly educated workforce. It should be an essential strategy to address inequities in college access and completion, and it really could be an important tool during the recovery efforts post-pandemic. If not now, when? So I'm so heartened by this important event today, and I urge us all to get involved as partners in expanding the reach and impact of early college programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Long, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Long, for joining us and for being a real asset to our work as policy researchers in the Commonwealth. We're constantly drawing on research you've produced to inform our work. My name is Ben Foreman. I'm the research director at MassINC, and I want to thank my colleague Simone, who you've met, who came in when this research report was well along, but in just the few short weeks she's been with us, she had an amazing mark on this research and really helped strengthen the work we've done here. I'm just going to quickly give you an overview of the takeaways from this research. The first is, as Dr. Long's discussed, Massachusetts faces large and growing gaps in college completion, and those are really going to have an impact on our economy if we don't solve them. And they're certainly having a very significant impact already on the social fabric of our commonwealth and our communities by way of the degree of inequality that they create. Early college is a highly effective solution to this fundamental challenge that we face. We've seen that from the national research that Dr. Long cited, but we're increasingly seeing that from the data we're collecting on the first cohorts of early college students in Massachusetts. And for that, enormous gratitude to Pierre Lucien, the data fellow with the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, who's been developing methods to track these students and sharing that data with us. But the thing that we really look at in this report is how many students are benefiting from early college, and is it enough to move the needle on these very large gaps in post-secondary completion that are growing? And we find that less than 2% of underserved students are currently participating in early college. And moving forward, we have to dramatically increase that number if we're going to continue to say that early college is one of our central strategies to address these equity gaps in higher education in Massachusetts. I just want to be very clear here that this is not a critique of anybody. The work that has gone on in communities to build early college partnerships is incredible. The state, through the Executive Office of Education, the Department of Higher Education, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, has been incredibly collaborative and provided great leadership. And the legislature is doing its part, without a doubt, with the Student Opportunity Act funding and continuing to find a way to support higher education. So we do not mean to criticize here at all. But in the spirit of a post-pandemic era, we think it's really important for us as a community to be very clear and very vocal about how we are going to address the challenges that we face going forward, and what's the timeline and the strategy for doing so that we can hold all of ourselves accountable to these students. Quickly, we've mentioned the gap several times now, but I think these data, we just got to keep looking at them, because this is our mirror. And this tells us that low-income students are almost 3 times less likely than students who have greater means to get through college and experience the economic mobility that it provides. And this gap has been growing, and it's similarly reflected by race and ethnicity if we look at Black and Hispanic students relative to white students in Massachusetts. These are the results of the first cohort of early college students who finished in 2019, and we look at whether they immediately went on to college the following fall. And again, this is the work of Pierre Lucien, who's developed a control group looking at students who are similar to the students who had early college by every measure we have available to us: their race, ethnicity, their linguistic ability, their family income. So we're making apples to apples comparisons here, and we're seeing the students who are touched by early college are fully 20 percentage points more likely to enroll immediately that following fall, which is a critical milestone for us, because we know that students who go on without interruption are 6 times more likely to eventually complete. Momentum is so critical. And when we look at the data further by race and ethnicity, we see the gains for Black students were nearly twice that large, almost 40 percentage points. And Hispanic students as well are gaining above average in terms of the percentage point gain. Early college students in this 2019 cohort were very disproportionately Black and Hispanic students. I think they were about 70% of the enrolled students in that first cohort. So the program is effectively targeting the students who are benefiting most and having outsized impact with those students. And again, as Dr. Long mentioned, this is very consistent with the national research. We have 2 random control trials where students were randomly assigned to early colleges. In both those studies, they showed the students of color experienced disproportionately large benefits from the opportunity to earn a significant number of college credits while they were in high school. These data track students now into the second year. So this is the 2019 class of graduates. We're following them into the second year. We haven't been able to do that control group. So the orange line here is just the difference between the early college students and other students in the same high schools. I know Pierre is continuing to work on building a control group for this 2 years trajectory. But we know from the last year's data that the control group and the students relative to their high school peers look very similar. So we don't expect that the difference to change very much when we do have those data with a more rigorous control. The thing to point out here is that the first year enrollment, immediate enrollment figure, the early college students were doing about 38% better than their peers. Second year persistence, now the gap has grown to 53% better. So it's still a 20 percentage point gain, but since we have a smaller denominator now at 38% versus 58%, in percentage terms, it's larger. So you think about that, in terms of our hearts, we care about the 58%, right? We want all students to succeed, but 53% is our actual yield. It's the number of additional graduates we're generating. So just pause there and think about that. This investment is increasing the number of students who are underserved, who are on the path to complete a college degree by 53%. Given that success, given everything we've seen elsewhere, I think that's a very strong indication that this is something we should be doing a whole lot more of. And so the rest of the report looks at how much more of it we're doing. Before I get to that, I do have one more slide to share. We hadn't looked at this before, and it just breaks down the career pathways that each of our early college programs are offering. And we think this is particularly important because if early college is shifting students towards STEM careers, where students of color are particularly underrepresented, it's going to have a very significant impact in terms of increasing equity in our Commonwealth's economy and also strengthening our Commonwealth's economy going forward. We were working on this report at the same time as we were doing research on entrepreneurs of color, and we've seen that in high-tech fields, people of color have been increasingly underrepresented in Massachusetts businesses. If you look at work that was done recently by Alex Bell and Raj Chetty, looking at where are the lost Einsteins, it's clear that students of color are not having the same opportunities to build the skills they need to be successful in our most high-value growing industries, and we need to do something about that. Well, early college is clearly doing something about that because it is exposing students to STEM earlier. About 2/3 of all early college high schools have built a STEM pathway at this point, and I know more are continuing to work on that. And that early exposure to the most difficult classes can help make sure that students are able to complete and stay in those fields. We know there's a long history of these so-called weed out classes in STEM, which have a terribly inequitable sort of outcome in terms of who are the students who have the support to get through that boot camp, if you will. Early college is giving students that early preparation so that they won't be weeded out and they'll stay in those industries and become leaders in those fields. So back to this point about scale now. I said at the outset that we're only reaching about 1 or 2% of students of color or low-income students in Massachusetts, with the 3,000 or so students who are currently participating in early college high schools in Massachusetts. On the good side, sort of the glass half full story here, is that we have created early college high schools in many of the high schools that disproportionately serve our low-income students and our students of color. We just looked at this across 3 sort of buckets, which are overlapping, of course. Our Gateway City high schools, the orange bars show about half of Gateway City high schools at this point do have an early college program. Or if you look at high schools that are predominantly low income or predominantly students of color, about 1/3 of those high schools at this point have launched an early college. But even within those discrete categories, we're still only reaching a very small fraction of students who could potentially benefit from these programs. So thinking about where we are and where we want to go, what our goal should be and how we set it, let me first talk about sort of based on our current expansion path, where we will get to within a decade. If you look at the orange bar, it's the number of designated high schools. We'd have about 60 at the current pace of expansion within a decade. And the number of students served, we'd be at about just over 14,000, approaching 15,000 at the current pace of expansion if we continue to serve it. Will that be enough to meaningfully move the dial on post-secondary completion in Massachusetts? We don't think so. And one of the big reasons why is because the number of students who are low income or students of color in the programs, is somewhere between half and 60% at this point. And that's a good thing. We don't want to create segregated high schools, segregated learning environments at all. We want these to be diverse programs. So we have to bake that into our number in terms of setting a goal. So if we think about it in terms of, how many students should we be serving to have impact at a population level? We think a good number is somewhere in the 30,000 range of low-income students. That would get to about 1/4 of all low-income students. We've heard that early college is a model designed for students who are sort of in the middle. It's not necessarily an approach that we need to take with our high-performing students who are very likely to go on to college and do very well. And it's certainly not a model that's going to be appropriate for students who are struggling. Asking struggling students to do high school and college at the same time is an awful lot in many instances. But if we look at about 1/4 of our low-income students, it seems like that is a segment that we could serve with this model that would dramatically affect their trajectory. And that would be 30,000 students in Massachusetts in grades 9 through 12. And again, if we think about this as not wanting to create segregated environments, we want these to be economically, racially, ethnically integrated learning environments, because the ability to do college and high school is something that should be attractive to all families. So there is a chance to actually put all students in the same classroom and really get away from the practices that we've had in the past of using exam schools and other things to keep advantaged students separate from disadvantaged students. If that's part of our design, we do that with intentionality. We'd want at least 1/3 of the students in the early college effort to be not from low-income backgrounds. So that would be, say, another 15,000 students. So all told, we'd be looking at an effort that would engage 45,000 high school students annually across Massachusetts. So I'll just end with, how do we get there from here? Number one is a clear funding mechanism to cover the higher education costs. The Student Opportunity Act is an amazing opportunity to advance early college growth in Massachusetts. It's going to cover a lot of the additional expenses that come on the high school side of the ledger. But colleges are delivering the instruction and often providing the textbooks. They can do early college at some level and eat those costs. But if we're starting to really scale this, they need to have predictability and they need to be reimbursed for the expenses they incur. That's the way it's worked in every state that's scaled early college to a significant level. So that's number one. Number 2 and 3 are related. Grant funding to design high quality programs. Right now, the startup grant is $30,000 for each early college high school, which is way too low to develop a program, particularly one that's going to serve large numbers of students from the get-go. And State Street and other philanthropy have been really important to help communities garnish more resources to do very good planning and bring in the expertise they need to build strong programs. But unfortunately, that kind of philanthropy is not available in every community in our Commonwealth. So we need to think about how we complement private resources with public resources so that communities that want to build something really strong have the dollars to do it. And the same goes for existing programs that are looking to deepen their work in lots of different ways. We think about this from the equity perspective. That means better serving English language learners. We don't really yet have an evidence-based model for that, although there's lots of reasons to believe that early college should be able to do that effectively. Serving more male students is something that all of our programs are struggling with, and higher ed as a field is struggling with. Thinking about how programs are creative to do that, that's where some more resources could be helpful. Ensuring that all credits transfer. All of our early college programs have been built to ensure that students are able to transfer credits both to meet general education requirements and also major requirements. If students know what their major is likely going to be, it's really important, if they earn lots of credits, that some of them are counting towards their major requirements in order for it to accelerate their progress toward a degree. as we scale early colleges, especially as we involve more private colleges, it's going to be really important to make sure that those credits continue to transfer and that students are getting the benefit of the hard work they've done. And so lastly, thinking about the impact our early college programs are having, we are looking at the data in a way we've never done, in my experience, with an intervention in education in Massachusetts, which is, provides an outstanding model. But there's more than just quantitative data, especially when we're thinking about equity. Doing qualitative research is going to be critically important to truly understanding the student experience, the experience of families, and also the experience of students who are in high schools who choose not to pursue early college for whatever reason. And the Department of Higher Education has named qualitative research as something that it sees as central to advancing equity. So early college is a great example of where we should be doing that in order to provide robust accountability. So, the good news I have to share is that on all these fronts, there's been legislation filed by Representative Roy, who's joining us today, and Representative Kate Lippert-Garabedian. Both of them draw on a lot of experience in higher education and have been very thoughtful about a comprehensive bill to advance the dialogue on how we build and scale strong early colleges in Massachusetts that are going to give more equity in our Commonwealth. So, we look forward to hearing from him at the end of the program. Now I want to turn it over to our colleague, Marcela Garcia at the Boston Globe. And, just again, in terms of providing robust accountability, there's lots we can do as researchers and lots we need to do as education leaders. But the eye of journalists is critically important as well. And Marcela has shown that in her work and her attention to early college. So Marcela, thank you for all you've done and for joining us this morning to lead the dialogue.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you to MassINC and State Street for this opportunity to participate in this important conversation. My name is Marcela Garcia, and I am a Boston Globe journalist. I have been part of the Globe editorial board, writing editorials for the past 7 years, and now I write mostly opinion columns. In that role, I have been very aware of the potential of early college as a key intervention to close persistent gaps. Last year, I began working on a column about the program and its future, given the coronavirus pandemic and the focus on social justice and racial equity that last year brought as well. In my column, I argued, or I made the point that the promise, as we've seen, of early college became much more significant, precisely because it is a policy that addresses educational equity and economic recovery. And I thought that was very key in a post-pandemic world. As we've seen here, repeated over and over again, the evidence is pretty clear. And again, Ben's presentation drove that point home. Early college is a relatively low-cost policy that provides an impressive return on investment. But it is perplexing that in Massachusetts, the program remains essentially a pilot. Again, like Ben mentioned, just 1.6% of underserved students in the Commonwealth are enrolled in an early college program. What is the real life impact of early college, and what are the barriers to grow it substantially, given its successful outcomes, to grow it, like Ben said, to an ideal goal of reaching 30,000 students? So those are the questions that we're going to try to unpack in the panel today. We have a stellar panel, and we'll also have a Q&A question at the end, so please feel free to submit them live here on the platform, and if possible, say who you're directing your questions to. With that, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have two students familiar with early college. We first have Imani Williams, who is a junior in high school. Imani attends New Heights Charter School in Brockton. We also have Francisco Paulino, who was an early college program participant and is now a first-year student at Quinsigamond Community College in Worcester. We also have Jennifer Davis Carey, who is the executive director of the Worcester Education Collaborative. And last but not least, we have Laura Douglas, who is the president of Bristol Community College in Fall River. Thank you to the four of you for being here with us to talk about early college. And I think that a good place to start is to talk about common misconceptions around early college. We have heard what early college is. Dr. Terry Long mentioned it's a pathway, it's an access strategy. But Jennifer, I wanted to begin with you. Why don't you give us a sense of what makes early college unique and different in your view and in your experience, but also talk about what isn't early college, given that there are common misconceptions around the program.
I think one of the unique things and one of the things that makes early college so successful is that it differs from what we had been used to, which was dual enrollment, which is where kids, where high school kids can just enroll in a college class while they're in high school. Early college takes this several steps beyond by providing kids the support that they need, and the not just from the college, but also, at least here in Worcester, a cohort of near peer mentors who are working with them throughout the college experience. It also directs them to particular classes that will help to set the stage for them and set a pathway to them for long-term success and long-term engagement with college. And that links also to the courses that they're taking in high school.
Laura, do you want to add something to that? Feel free to chime in from your view on the community college side of the equation. What is it about early college that makes it so impactful?
Thank you so much, Marcella. Yes, I think what Jennifer said is certainly true. And when people don't understand that this is a pathway, they think that, oh, these are college credits and these are for elite students. It's just for AP and, you know, it's not for me. But in fact, at the with the early college program, it's much more like a guided pathway, especially at with our community college programs. So you're beginning a pathway to a degree. So it's really meaningful. The credits are baked into the degree. There's no issue with transferability. So this is your onboarding, a real rapid onboarding into college with great supports and great advantages. And so it really also, I think, is there are some misconceptions sometimes in the high schools with guidance counselors. They don't often understand the difference between early college and dual enrollment. And one of the things that we can probably do better, all of us, is to work with our high school guidance counselors so that they can really understand how this program can really help us advance our equity agenda.
That's great. That's an important point. I would like to bring in Imani and Francisco. Imani, let me begin with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you first learn about early college and what made you decide to go for it?
My name is Imani Williams. I'm a junior and I'm 17.
Imani, is everybody hearing Imani or is it just me? Yeah. Imani, we cannot hear you.
2017, so the school year was only it was only a few months left of the school year. And one day I ran into an acquaintance and she had mentioned the school she was attending that had just relocated to the area. She had told me how the school was, now that I think about it, I don't even think she knew it was early college. The way she was explaining it, I thought it was a trade school, but I told my parents and they signed me up and it was a lottery, so I had to register to get accepted.
Wait, so this is for the, excuse me for interrupting, but we lost you for a second in there and I couldn't hear what you were saying. I don't know if it was just me or the rest of the panelists too, but I couldn't hear the beginning of your explanation. This is when you were in high school, in your charter school.
I started in 8th grade.
Okay, for the in the charter school that you're now.
Yeah.
And then when you got there, how did you first learn about early college? Did the teachers tell you about it, or how did you first learn about early college?
I was given a piece of paper and they told me to take it home and fill it out. And I guess it was to get consent to, you know, start taking college classes. I didn't even know that the school offered early college. I thought it was a trade school. And
I see.
yeah, it was like a surprise kind of.
And so you signed up for early college and you started taking classes when? How long have you been taking classes?
I started taking my first class when I was 14, so it's been 3 years now.
In which college you're going to for the early college? Huh?
MassINC Community
Okay.
College.
And tell us about what classes, like is it math? Is it STEM? What is it?
Well, I'm trying to earn a degree in liberal arts. So I'm taking, history, literature, writing, sociology, everything,
So what about the future? Do you see yourself going to college now that you are in an environment that it's college-like? And, how has that helped you get there to make that decision?
How's it helped me? Well, I feel like I'll be graduating with an associate's degree and I'll probably have a few extra credits. So it makes me want to just continue the journey, right away, just hop into trying to get my bachelor's degree. I don't want to stop.
So that's basically what it did for you. It put you in a path and you don't see a way of stopping. That's amazing. A great way of putting it. Francisco, let me turn to you and I'll go back to you, Imani, in a while, but tell us about your experience. You're already transitioned into college. You were part of early college, but let's begin in high school. How did you first learn about early college and where did you go to high school in the first place?
Okay, so I first heard about early college through QCC. There's this representative named Andy that reached out to juniors and seniors. I was a junior at the time. And the main reason why I was very excited to take early college was because at the time, because I was an IP student, I didn't really have access to AP courses. And I was like, a lot of my classes were a little too easy, and I wanted a challenge. And I could assure you, there was some early college courses that were very challenging. Like, for example, English 101 and English 102 with Mr. Jem. But these classes gave me the ability to go into college with a lot of confidence. Because, I mean, it's a little hard to say, but like, when I was in summer, ready to apply for college, I got like a massive, unbelievably like difficult injury, or I got carpal tunnel from exercise. And then on top of that, I also got COVID, which completely paralyzed my arms and my hands. And I was very worried about like going to college because I had this injury, and even though it was like slowly healing, I had like many sleepless nights, and I was just, I was very, afraid. But because I took those early college classes, especially the ones with Mr. Jem, I had so much confidence because I am always been someone that's like identified myself, especially when I was in high school, as someone who's amazing at math and not that good at writing. But because his classes were so hard and I had a lot of support, I had so much confidence going into college. Like specifically, I had this macroeconomics class where I had to write a research paper, and I was able to write it with ease, even though I had this bad injury, which almost set me back. Like, if you know my situation, like I had to get like many extensions on like some of my classes because of my injury. And if I didn't have that academic and self-advocacy skills that I've got from the classes at early college, there's no possible way I would have been able to pass all 4 of my classes.
Wow.
Like I would not be in college right now if it wasn't for early college. No
That's a
way.
really key point about early college, I think, because like you say, you didn't have access to AP, but you definitely had the talent. And sometimes what's missing is the supports around college, beyond the academics, right? To get you there. Francisco, are you the first in your family to go to college?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, my father, he went to college when he was in Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
But my mom didn't. So I'm using this initiative to support her.
Oh, that's
hopefully
so
earlier.
powerful. You mean to bring
Yeah,
her into, post-secondary life and maybe getting her enrolled in a community college or a college?
that's possible, but mostly my goal with this is to graduate early so I can support her faster.
Oh, I see what
Because
you
I
mean.
know she's a very amazing, independent mother, and I love her so much. So I want to
So sweet.
be the best student that I could be for her.
That is so sweet. And so lastly, what are you studying? Where you want to major in? Are you doing economics or something more math related?
Oh, so right now, I'm taking like Calculus 3, and I'm also I'm basically majoring in engineering, and I'm planning on going to WPI a semester early,
Wow.
with hopes to have like a engineering major.
Good for you.
And one of the things I want to touch on as well is with early college, I was able to take pre-calculus over the summer. So I had the ability to take AP calculus my senior year, which is why I'm at Calculus 3 right now. And I'm very happy about that.
That's amazing. So Imani, let me go back to you. Are you also are you the first one in your family to go to college?
No, I'm not.
So talking about what Francisco said about the supports beyond the academic life that early college provides, can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like right now for you? What does it mean to be in a college-like environment taking these classes while you are a high school student?
Well, my New Heights supports us all the way. There's faculty hired just to support students. There's liaisons for each class. You know, if you're ever confused, maybe you missed a class, you can go to, the liaison and tell them, you're struggling. They'll give you resources. They'll fill you on information. They really are just there to support you and to help you go through the process.
And so lastly, just a question for the two of you. What have you observed from your peers, like people, who you attended high school with, in your case, Francisco or Imani, people in high school? Are they aware of early college? Do you talk to them about early college? And do you want them to join the program, given that you have had a good experience with it?
Wait, should I go first? Or
Yeah, you can go first, Francisco.
So, I mean, I know from experience, like, I went to pre-calculus with this guy named Joe, and he was also one of the ones that was able to transfer to AP calculus because of the program.
Mm-hmm. So
And
you've seen good experiences in other people.
Oh yeah, and I've made like a lot of great friends through early college, and have met a lot of amazing people. Like there was even this amazing networking event that I had that I was able to go to because of early college.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's just like other things like that really allows students to shine and to experience different things.
Got it.
It was
Imani, do
very
you want
fun.
to? Oh, sorry. Imani, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll add on. New Heights, there's approximately 750 students, and of those 750, around maybe 400 or 350 are either in early college. Half of them are dual enrollment, and the other half are full-time college students. So,
Wow.
I mean, most of my peers are also taking college classes. So, I mean, yes, I encourage, the younger grades. Sometimes I'll go and I'll help teach and, to show them one day you're going to be like me, you're going to be, taking the classes. So, of course, I encourage others, but most of my peers are, a part of EC.
Yeah, that's great. So let me turn to Jennifer and Laura now for taking a step back and looking sort of at the big picture. But Jennifer, I was wondering if you can give us a sense, and to the extent that you have data or statistics, feel free to share, about how the program has evolved in Worcester, and if there are metrics of success there as well. Talk to us a little bit about how it works in Worcester.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because, as you know, Worcester has two public institutions of higher education, Quinsigamond Community College and Worcester State University. And those two institutions, along with the school district essentially have created a partnership in support of early college. And the penetration, Worcester is has one of the highest participation rates of kids in early college in the Commonwealth. So just to give you an idea of the penetration among underrepresented students, of the kids who are enrolled, about 24% are Black or African American, about 35% are Latino, 26% are white, 15% Asian. And except for the Latino students, where we still have some work to do to increase enrollment, all of those percentages are greater than the percentage in the overall student body. So the word is getting out. The other is that because of the work of the consortium or the partnership, the colleges have been able to come together with the district to create a very sound mentoring program that I talked about before. And there is an early college team that works together to identify students who might be interested, who have not yet signed up, to support the kids who are already in the program, to monitor their grades and attendance so that you can step in and intervene before an issue becomes a problem. So it's a very strong partnership. And I think one of the strengths of it, is that it is a team that's working together in support of the kids.
That sounds great. So Laura, similarly, could you tell us about your efforts to grow the program? I understand that you're working with the coalition of stakeholders in the South Coast that want to get this done, that want to reach more underserved students. Please talk about those efforts and why is it important to get other sectors involved with early college?
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, we've really worked in a number of ways to grow the program. And certainly we are very focused on our gateway communities because our gateway communities have a very a diverse student population. And of course, that grows the diversity within our early college programs, although Bristol County has a lot of diversity in terms of rural and urban. We've been trying to align our programs with some of the needs that we have in our specific communities. So for example, offshore wind is a up and coming industry, and we were able to advance a very interesting early college program with one of our vocational technical schools, Diamond, and also UMass Dartmouth. So we created actually the sandwich method with Bristol in the middle, where students started at Diamond and then they came to Bristol. All they need in this program is 1 year to complete, and then they can go on to UMass Dartmouth, and it saves them a whole year of college. So we're really looking at how we can build in these other partners as you imagined. One of the ways that we're looking to the future, because this is growing, we're learning all the time. And as Jennifer said, you know, we've been building in our supports and we're doing other things to really raise those levels of success. But one of the things that we're looking at next is to embed in our early college program some micro credentials. So students, community college students, you know, life gets in the way, right? We heard from Francisco that, you know, he got COVID and carpal tunnel and, you know, things could have stopped for him. And things do stop for our students. So if we can embed micro-credentials like certificates into the early college pathway while they're still in high school, and when they graduate and then come to Bristol Community College, if they already have that micro-credential and can be in the workforce, working in their field at a sustainable wage, imagine how incredibly powerful that is. And imagine the return on investment when you can walk away not only with a great start to a college degree, but also that type of certificate or credential. And, you know, I think in the South Coast, we're really starting to mature. We have an education committee as part of our One South Coast Chamber, and I've been a part of that for almost 4 years now. And in the last year, we created a spin-off group, which is just to work on early college, to try to advance the support from the business community and to help people understand that when we increase early college in our communities, we can attract more businesses and industry because we have a more skilled workforce. And in the South Coast, that is one of our major problems. We need to diversify our business and industry. And our students, by the way, at Bristol, they stay in these communities. So it's really important to give students college, early college, have them stay, and have them be a part of growing industries so we can raise our median family income, which now is just $40,000 a year in our gateway cities of New Bedford and Fall River.
So now for the $1 million question, I guess, what is missing right now in terms of scaling it up? We know that there's going to be funds coming in. I don't think that's sort of, I mean, money is always a problem, but right now we're at a key moment in which we're going to get funding from the Student Opportunity Act, but also, from the American Rescue Plan. There's a lot of federal dollars coming in. In your view, Laura and Jennifer, what are the barriers or concerns right now that prevent us from prevents the state from making a meaningful investment in early college and, to finally make Massachusetts a leader and not a follower nationally when it comes to early college? Jennifer, do you want to begin?
Sure. I think as Ben mentioned, and as others have talked about, the funding really is an issue. We need a stable source of funding to support both the course credit, but also to support the other services that we need to have this program be successful. We are well past the stage of proof of concept and well past the stage of pilot, and we need to embed this and grow this so that it is not a program that we offer, but a part of the high school experience for kids. I would like us to see us get to the point where every student has the opportunity and is encouraged to take at least one college course. And as we have seen, certainly we've seen it here in Worcester, that some of the kids who use this opportunity well and are well encouraged and supported can actually graduate from high school with the 2 years behind them and an associate's degree. We talk about the global cost of higher education. This is both cost effective and in terms of the other benefits of having kids stay in college and come out with a usable credential. It has well proven its efficacy.
Can you just a quick follow-up, because I think it's important to spell it out for people who may not be familiar with the program. What are some of the non-academic supports, that again, early college could provide? And like you said, that's the money also that we need to pay for: academic advising, tutoring, free textbooks, Laura said in the chat. But what is it? I mean, is it, again, these are sort of little barriers that people sometimes have for college that are non-academic. The buying texts, but also the advising, right? Like hiring people. Is that the extra supports you were talking about?
Yes. And I think, they may seem like little expenses in the context of a state budget or the context of an institutional budget, but things like a textbook can be an obstacle to a student being in a class and being able to persist. The additional things, being able to at home, get the best internet connection that you can get. It's those kinds of things that are sometimes considered ancillary expenses that really are not, that are essential expenses if this is going to be successful.
Laura?
Yeah, so.
Oops, you're mute.
Thank you. We really need to institutionalize early college, as Jennifer said, and there are just so many ways that we can do this. Another area where we definitely need financial support is not just in paying for the classes and for the supports at the college, on the college side. We also need to be able to support some embedded assistance within our high school. So our local high schools, our guidance counselors are absolutely wonderful. They go above and beyond, but we're going to need to create some centralized staff and support to make sure that the students are getting the help they need. We really do partner the colleges and the high schools, and to make sure that we have the staff on both sides is important. I think the literature is showing that, you know, really the funding that we get only supports about 65% of the cost. So of course, ramping that up so that all of our students can be successful is really important. Another and final point that I'll make is that we need to continue to collect and assess the data so that we better understand how we can continue to make the best investment and get the best return on our investment. You know, here in Massachusetts, we can really benefit by starting a consortium, a way to share our best practices, a way to elevate. We, I think, are very mindful at the colleges and the high schools to use every penny wisely. We want to continue to do that and really bring home the return on investment and make it as great as it can be for our students, for our communities, and for our families. So this investment in research and assessment will also be key to advancing in the future and understanding the full impact.
Got it. So that I think concludes our panel. The time is up, but before we launch into the Q&A from the audience, I would like to introduce you to State Representative Jeff Roy of Franklin. And if you didn't know, the town of Franklin is actually the birthplace of Horace Mann. So Representative Roy will talk briefly about legislation that he's filed on early college.
Well, thank you, Marcella, and thank you to MassINC, MBAE, State Street, and all of the great partners for inviting me here today. Amani and Francisco, I just want to say your remarks were outstanding, humbling, and a great reminder about why we do this work. And incidentally, Francisco, I got my start at WPI back in 1979. I think that'll be a great place for you. I'm really encouraged by the calls today for transformative change. And I'm here to tell you a bit about House Bill number 693, an act relative to college and high schools, which is a roadmap for success. Amani sent me a wonderful email on Monday describing her early college experience. And I was particularly encouraged by her statement that no matter your background or identity, early college can change your life. I couldn't agree more. As a first-generation college student myself, I have seen the transformative power of education. And my higher education journey substantially changed the trajectory of my life, and I want to see that opportunity extended to everyone. We know that college and other post-secondary opportunities are great springboards and powerful equalizers. And I know that providing these opportunities is foundational for all of you here today. But to do that, we must build on our success to date and provide even more robust college and high school experiences throughout the Commonwealth. And that is why Rep. Kate Libber-Garabedian and I filed H693. The bill provides opportunities for students, no matter their background or identity, to take college courses in high school, engage in self-discovery, and develop a mindset for success. Just the things that Amani was seeking and has found through the early college program in Brockton. H693 is a comprehensive plan to develop a robust college and high school program, and it addresses many of the recommendations that we heard today and are part of the report that was released today. Our bill puts in place the necessary administrative, programmatic, and funding structures required for an expansive and thriving college and high school experience in Massachusetts. It establishes a new centralized college and high school office in DESE that is charged with defining and implementing all college and high school programs. It develops a sustainable funding mechanism to accelerate growth and provides additional financial incentives to programs that award industry-recognized credentials to high school students. It helps ensure that students receive college credit for all courses completed. It encourages participation by students, parents, and a network of support services. And at its most basic, it requires students to fill out a FAFSA, apply for aid, and take that step towards a post-secondary experience. I like to say that the bill offers a threefer in outcomes. Number one, it expands degree attainment, particularly for populations that are not doing nearly as well as we need them to. Second, it addresses the student loan crisis by reducing the costs of higher education for families and students. And third, it helps students with their career development. Getting this bill passed is the first call to action. But today, we've also heard calls to increase funding for programs like early college. In that spirit, I want to remind folks that it was the legislature who, in the midst of a pandemic last year, increased funding for early college. It's part of the commitment by Speaker Mariano, a former educator himself, to provide opportunities for students to succeed. And it was the legislature who, in 3 successive sessions, has voted to place the Fair Share Amendment on the ballot to provide the financial resources for quality public education and affordable public colleges and universities. And it was the legislature that enacted the Student Opportunity Act in 2019 to overhaul the state's funding formula for public education and infused an additional $1.5 billion of funding into the budget. And of course, it was the legislature who voted to index the gas tax in 2013, one of my first votes as a legislator, to provide $10 billion for transportation infrastructure, only to see that effort repealed by voters in 2014. On these questions of funding, the legislature has made the effort, but we need your leadership and your help to secure any additional funds. And that's my second call to action. Massachusetts has a history of being innovative and has a well-earned reputation for being leaders in the education arena. But as you heard, we have a little catching up to do on college and high school experiences. We have the brain power and personnel to do it well here in Massachusetts. So I call on you to help by supporting the advancement of H693 and supporting the funding efforts that will build the policies to make it happen. Together, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Roy, for that. That was very powerful and a strong call to action as well. So now we're going to go to take questions from the audience, which have been were submitted already. We have a few. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to answer each and one of them. So I'm just going to begin with a question from Wendy Taylor for Jennifer. What does the peer mentorship component look like? Can you unmute yourself, Jennifer?
Yes, sorry. The peer mentorship component has trained near peer mentors. So those are current college students who are assigned to the high school students to work with them. They meet with them periodically in informal but regular meetings. They also correspond with them by email, drop in on classes with them, give them reminders about upcoming deadlines, administrative deadlines, and so forth, help them to identify services both within the college, in the high school, and in the community if necessary. So they're providing some of that navigation of what can be a complex system for a high school kid, and also some of the emotional and social support that kids need.
That's great. So Laura or Jennifer, Sally Courier is asking which I think it's a very important question, but we forget to sometimes say or explain this to people who are not familiar with early college. How are the high school students selected to the early college programs? Is there an application process, and what does that look like?
Laura?
Yeah, so it really does depend, I think, school by school. And you know, at Bristol, we are asking our local high schools to really prioritize students that don't really think about themselves as going to college. We're really looking for students who have the potential to do well in these programs, but don't really visualize themselves in college. So it's a different type of outreach, and one that we really hope will encourage students and families to think about how college can be a part of their future and how they can get that leg up while they're still in high school.
Yeah, so just to be clear, there isn't like an exam or anything like that at all
No,
involved.
no.
No.
Open. Yeah, that's good to, yeah, it's good to say because sometimes people get the wrong impression. So this is a question for Francisco from an anonymous viewer. Francisco, you mentioned extra support in the early college program, not just academic. Which non-academic supports were important for you?
So specifically, I know I was in touch with like Artie and stuff, and he was able to help me through my classes. And I also had support from other people as well who really encouraged me to move forward with early college. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here today speaking and advocating for it, because of all the support I received.
Is this a counselor, I'm sorry, or someone who worked in early college on the high school side, or?
Yeah, as a representative of early college, yes.
Oh, I see. Got it. At your high school. And this person really, you know, helped you navigate the program and the college experience.
Yeah. My counselor as well. I believe his name was Mr. Quinn. He also helped me through it as well. And I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. We're very happy that you're here sharing your experience. I have now a question from Margaret Wong, either for Laura, Jennifer, or Ben. If these scales as planned, is the expectation that the college courses will be taught by high school teachers, like with AP courses, or will the classes be taught by college professors like they are now? If by college professors, will more full-time college professors be hired, or will this expansion result in replacing high school teachers with unbenefited adjunct instructors? Does anybody want to take that on? Maybe Ben, do you want to?
No, thank you, Marcella. That's a great question. It's something we thought a lot about. I mean, we just happen to be this at an inflection point where the timing is very good for early college expansion because of demographics. The college going population is declining. So we have college faculty who are in a position to serve more students. You know, and as the programs grow, we'll see how that plays out. But, you know, with the supports that early college students are getting, you know, we're putting them in position to do pretty well in lecture settings with, I think, you know, a fair number of students in their class. It's a really important question about what happens then in the high school setting, because we're moving students from instruction in high schools to instruction in colleges. And my hope, my sincere hope for that would be that means that, frankly, the high school teachers have lower number of students in their classes who aren't in early college, right? Because we know in urban high schools, if a teacher is teaching biology to 125 students, it's really hard for them to provide all the support those students need to be successful. So if we can lower the demands on them a little bit and fill some of the slack on the college side, it seems like there's a very win-win opportunity to be had here. And so, you know, this is something the research looks at a lot, is what is the effect of class size reductions? And sometimes the studies have shown that it hasn't been all that powerful because we haven't had the workforce to absorb more students, you know, and so at least in the near term, it doesn't translate into great benefits. But here we have the workforce, and if we're really artful and we use our Student Opportunity Act dollars well, I think we can get a lot of synergy for early college students, for college faculty, and for high school faculty and high school students who are pursuing a different pathway aside from early college. If that all makes sense.
It does. No, it definitely does. Does Jennifer or Laura want to add to Ben's excellent answer?
I think that Ben's comment about what the demographics are telling us about high school and college enrollment is an important consideration. I think also it's critical to think about the reduction in class size in some of the high schools and the benefit that that will have. particularly in the urban districts, for some of these classes, the teacher load really is extraordinary. And to be able to relieve that so we can provide more attention to the kids, I think is another unanticipated benefit.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So we don't have a lot of time left. So this is gonna be the last question, sadly, and it could be for Jennifer, Laura, or for Representative Roy. Helene Levin wants to know, how can I help promote and support this outstanding initiative? I am a certified guidance counselor and adjustment counselor with 20 years experience working in schools. Several of my students have participated in dual enrollment. Who wants to take that on? Maybe.
Well, I'll jump in quickly and say, contact your state representative or your state senator or both, and urge them to sign on to H693, because that's going to be the real conversation starter at the State House and the real bridge builder to get this program ramped up. So I would urge you to do that.
Awesome. Laura, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I think that Helene can contact her principal as well and ask if they have considered the early college designation. That's the initial startup grant. There are not that many of those grants, but it is a good place to start and to think about building a relationship with your local community college or for your institution to partner in this effort.
That's great. There's a great place to end this part of the program. And I apologize to the people who submitted questions. We didn't have time to answer those. Our apologies. But right now, I'm happy to conclude this morning's event by calling or bringing in rather Ed Lambert, who will offer closing remarks. And thank you to our amazing panelists. Before we move on, your insights were tremendous and incredibly helpful. So now Ed Lambert, who is the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education, will join us to provide closing remarks.
Marcella, thank you so much. And thanks for facilitating such a terrific program. There are so many takeaways that could be mentioned. Jennifer's point about institutionalizing early college, moving from a pilot and program to make it part of the culture of all of our high schools. The remarks from our students, just terrific examples of young talent talking about how they've been energized and on a path to success with full confidence. Just a great panel, and I want to thank everybody for their participation. I'm very pleased to be able to offer some closing remarks today, not only as the leader of MBAE, Mass Business Alliance for Education, which is an organization that has always supported the goals of equity and opportunity for students, as well as the creation of a talent pipeline that keeps our economy strong. But I also have some perspective as a former mayor of a gateway city. Fall River, the place where I was born and raised, and I still am very proud to call my home, is one of those communities where the scaling up of early college would be a game changer, a place where families want their students to succeed, but where there are significant challenges that still remain in terms of our high school graduates persisting and graduating from college or getting the post-secondary credential that we know is currently required of over 72% of jobs in the state's workplace. This report from MassINC rightly singles out early college as a proven strategy that works, particularly for first-generation students and students of color, those most in need of the kind of disruption that the status quo demands of all of us, students in cities like Fall River and elsewhere who deserve the opportunity to be better prepared for college and career success. Early college can help close opportunity and achievement gaps that can lead to the closing of wage and wealth gaps, an issue of growing importance to the state's business community. Our state's business leadership is engaging vigorously on this issue in support of ramping up early college as a success strategy for students because it offers greater equity of opportunity and a gateway to upward economic mobility, the kind of income security that eludes far too many families and affects the state's overall competitiveness and economic health. Fully preparing students for college and career success will help build stronger communities and a stronger commonwealth. In particular, the career-themed pathways that early college programs facilitate, along with the data that show their effectiveness, puts it front and center of the education policy initiatives that business leaders want to support and see advanced in schools across the state. Ben mentioned in his presentation the shift towards STEM pathways. President Douglas talked about getting credentials in the hands of high school students. These things are incredibly important to the state's business leaders as they watch it development. They understand what it means for career readiness of students. And as such, early college in the business community, the support for early college is growing exponentially. A lot of our state's business leaders and organizations have joined in the signing of a letter that was recently sent to legislators, now with over 150 signatures, asking for the necessary funding to scale up early college to meet the present and future need, particularly as Massachusetts puts together its plan for rebounding from the crushing economic impact of the pandemic. We feel very strongly that the state has to prioritize the expansion of early college in Massachusetts schools. We are very grateful for the leadership shown by Representative Jeff Roy and colleagues of his like Representative Kate Lippert-Garabedian in promoting both legislation and increased funding in support of early college in the state legislature. And it's important to note in a final call to action that they need our help. Attending events like this are important only if we're spurred to action and advocacy on behalf of students. So let's make this research actionable by reaching out to spread the word about the impact and effectiveness of early college while seeking to support to increase funding and attention for this proven strategy. It works. Thank you to all of today's event sponsors. Thank you so much to the panelists. And of course to MassINC for another great policy report. And all of you for not only attending today, but what you're going to do on behalf of expanding early college in the days and weeks to come. Have a terrific day, everyone. Thank you.